Hey everyone, welcome to the first episode of ProdSec Decoded, a podcast where we deep dive into the fascinating intersection of product security and artificial intelligence. I'm your host, Pratik Chaudhary, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Jiradeep Vittal, who is the CTO at Apaxon. On ProdSec Decoded, we'll be having candid conversations with the brightest minds who are navigating the complex landscape of securing products in a world increasingly powered by AI. Today, we had a great discussion with a true leader in the security space, Sameer Sait. Sameer brings in a wealth of experience as a seasoned CISO, having previously served as CISO at Whole Foods Market during his time at Amazon and as VP and CISO at ForcePoint. He has had also other CISO gigs before. Sameer has had impressive background and also includes being co-founder and COO at Balkan ID, an identity security company. He's an active strategic advisor and investor in the security space. Sameer also boasts his own podcast, the Identity Jedi podcast, focusing on pressing issues in the identity space. In today's episode, Chiradeep and I spoke to Sameer about his journey through the evolving security landscape. We got his insights on what is product security, what are the challenges of product security, how do they differ from application security, how to use agentic approaches and AI towards product security, and discuss some of the practical strategies and implementations for organization, budgeting, and so on and so forth. Take a listen. Hey, Sameer, welcome to the show.
Hey guys, how are you? Be
Good.
here.
So,
I haven't been on Descript in a while, so I'm excited to test out this new service that you have. Let's do it.
yeah, this is the new AI tool. So, we thought we'll give it a try.
Nice.
So, RSA is right around the corner. So, I'm assuming you're going to be there as well, right?
Yeah, I'm there this time, and this is my first time in maybe about 4 years since I've not been a co-founder. So I'm actually back in the practitioner seat as a CISO, vCISO, and I'm invited to all the parties, unlike last year where nobody wanted to talk to me. So it feels good.
Awesome. Hoping to see you there. There'll be a lot of people I've been talking to are also going to be there. So, it'll be great to go to some of the parties there.
Yep, exactly.
All right. So, Chiradeep, should we get started then?
Yeah. I'm looking forward to RSA too. It's been a very long time for me as well. Even though it's right in my backyard, I do like the parties. So looking forward to it.
All right, perfect. So, Sameer, I think today we wanted to talk to you a little bit about product security, ProdSec in short. And so, I know you have had a very interesting career journey. You were a practitioner, CISO multiple times, and then you've been an entrepreneur. You've been advising companies, you've been investing in companies. So, maybe we start off with your personal journey a little bit about what are the learnings along the way. Maybe we can just start off there.
Yeah. So unlike a lot of my peers in the security community, I didn't grow up in a more technical discipline of or testing or deploying software or hacking into services, etc. A lot of my very smart peers grew up in those arenas. I kind of came into security through the risk compliance side when SOX 404 was a hot topic back in early 2000s. So it brings a different perspective, as you would imagine, more rigor and more compliancy, as I mentioned earlier. But I think it also gave me that perspective of put everything in the terms of business risk, system risk, company risk, etc. So I'm very well grounded in those principles. And it kind of helped a little bit more that I came from financial services. So there's obviously a lot of regulatory oversight, not just compliance for the sake of winning deals or closing deals. So that's kind of where I started, but slowly took over teams like SecOps and then deployed code back early on when it was an early product. So I did some AppSec there, ran a team. I learned a lot from my teams and the consulting companies that we brought in to these different areas. But yeah, I co-founded a startup in the identity security space about 4 years ago. I recently left to get back into the CISO world. Right, the startup is still doing fine, but felt like it was good for me to get back into my area of core expertise. And so hence I'm back in the CISO seat.
That's actually fascinating. I mean, I've worked in larger companies and smaller companies, and I think we can clearly see the stark difference between the two environments. So you have
Oh, yeah.
navigated the corporate CISO world and then the startup ecosystem. So they are
Yeah.
very different environments, right?
Yeah, very different. And it gives you a lot of empathy, right? I mean, you've also been in startups and very, very large companies. You've helped scale companies. So you've probably done a little bit more than me, I think, because you've done the not just the 0 to 1, but the 1 to 100. And then you've been at the companies that have been 100 to 1,000, right? I haven't really done the 1 to 100, but I have the empathy now of how hard sales is, how hard marketing from a creative side is, how hard developing product is, right? Like as a CISO, we're so used to seeing large companies, or even if we have a design partner, they move quickly to make us happy. When you're actually doing 0 to 1 to get the customer happy, the heavy lifting that happens behind the scenes is like, it's not a cakewalk. Let's just put it that way. It doesn't magically happen.
Right. And yeah, Shiradeep also had experiences working in smaller companies, larger companies. He's obviously very hands on building products as well as leading teams. So maybe let's just do a deep dive into product sec now. But before we get started, maybe it's a good idea to talk about a little bit about definitions. I've seen a lot of people talk about product security versus application security. They conflate the two sometimes. Sometimes they think about these two as two different entities. So maybe we start off with, how do you define product security and what do you see are the differences between product security and traditional application security and so on?
I can go first and then maybe Chiradeep can give his opinions. For me, I feel like we've actually, a lot of us in, especially the Bay Area folks, and I'm in Austin, Texas, unlike you guys in the Bay, but I feel like a lot of us have been doing product security, but we haven't really called it that. I want to give us some credit to say that we've been thinking bigger. But for me, AppSec was very much a, SaaS scan of a web app when apps were a little bit less complicated, if you will, and maybe I'm dating myself, you know, some level of focusing on that particular application functionality in a black box kind of environment, right? I think that's what I've traditionally looked at AppSec, scanning code, pen testing, maybe even highlighting the patches from Microsoft app that we've deployed in our environment to some extent. That's not our app, but it's a SaaS app, if you will. I think ProdSec is kind of looking at it the life cycle, right? One is the life cycle. The second is the word product itself is now morphed into more than just software alone. It's now the platform the software runs on, which could be as a service, could be homegrown platform, it could be an integrated solution working through an API that does automated reporting based on the app, but somebody built that little module. Maybe they used a third party open source module to plug in. It could be hardware, right? Like sometimes I don't even realize that, you could control devices using software. So that's part of your ecosystem. Like for me, Tesla, the car is a product that I use. And all the components that are driven by the software have to also be understood to really understand product security end to end, right? That's kind of how I think about it. But I'd love to hear Chiradeep's opinion because given he's much deeper than I am in this space.
Well, I'll bring a developer's perspective. So for me, AppSec was mostly a burden, I would say. Security teams pushing vulnerabilities and all those kind of container problems. And it's just, at the end of the week, it's really dozens and dozens of fixes that you have to do. Well, of course, you have to also deliver your product features, right? To a developer, a product is the features and not the security part. And I can tell you that most product managers have no idea what security are either, even though their name has product manager in them. So developers are a little tired of AppSec and they want a better solution than just send me all the bugs that you find, that your tools find, and then fix them. And to be honest, app developers also don't know the whole security landscape. They don't know how they can be hacked. They don't know how to defend themselves. They know some best practices, but it's sorely lacking. And from the security side, I think they barely know what the product does. They do
Yes.
is look at the tools all day, and but that's their job, right? I mean, that's what they've been told to do. Reduce the risk, and the number one way to measure that is to reduce the number of critical bugs. So it's a tough landscape for both application developers and product security teams. And I think that product security has to be some way that both teams up level themselves. Whereas application developers know what security is and have the tools and means to fix it. easily. And on the security side, being able to give more context to their whatever the tools are saying and to understand the pain the developer is going through. So to me, that's more of a holistic, what is product security?
And Chiradeep, you have also worked in both developer side as well as the security side. So makes sense from your perspective. Both of you have been talking about something which is very important, where applications are getting more and more complex. There's microservices, there is now third party LLMs and SaaS services that are being used, lots of different components. So I think product security becomes more and more important. Maybe we can switch gears a little bit into the AI and agentic approach. So I know, Chiradeep, you have been doing a lot of work on the AI and agentic side. Maybe you want to kick it off?
Yeah, so I think last year we decided to see how generative AI can help the security teams as well as the application developers scale up their security practice, if you will. And it's been terrific, right? You can see the improvement of these LLMs has been leaps and bounds. And what you thought was not possible 3 months ago is suddenly possible. And, in the code that you wrote 3, 4 months ago to carefully orchestrate the LLM is you can just throw it away because LLM does it all. So it's a little bit frightening, but also exhilarating, right? And I think the 2025 is supposed to be the year of agents, where agents not only do like one-shot things, autonomously do like multi-step things like, hey, go book me a vacation, which includes the air ticket and the bed and breakfast and the lunch and the dinner and the spa and everything else. And it's just one shot and you just, you know, let it do its job. So that agentic future is coming, and I see no reason why that shouldn't come into security as well.
Yeah, and I think, Sameer, you also talked quite a bit about how AI is helping security and maybe product security in general. So maybe it'll be good to hear your thoughts. I heard this term of called agentic battlefield of security, where the product is getting more and more used in terms of agents. Agents are talking to agents. There are so many protocols, MCP, A2A, so many protocols that are coming up. And then hackers or bad actors have been using agents for quite a while. So how do we think about security in terms of agent and agentic approach? Maybe would love to hear your thoughts on that.
When you say thinking about security from an agentic approach, you mean securing the agents or the agents being used to be more productive in securing the apps in question? Both angles make
Actually,
sense.
both angles. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've seen a lot of startups. I still get pitched quite a bit for startups through my VC contacts on the, securing agents, right? Securing the new applications, securing agents from a lot of focus on the data input validation and the output validation more, right? Like safety of AI use along with inadvertent sharing of corporate secrets with an agent. That seems to be the hot topic with a lot of the startups that I talk to. It's a crowded space for sure. And I can see why people are worried because customers have a marketing person that wants to start using agents for creating marketing collateral, etc. I don't know yet, and I'm not a soothsayer in this space, but I don't know if the future is the chat GPTs of the world inherently building these guardrails, maybe buying a company or two. There's another unicorn in the making in this space. I don't know if the unicorn making in this space, but again, I don't want to say anything because one of the co-founders of ChatGPT, OpenAI, I heard has started a company, or he has started, Ilya, started a company for safety of AI, right? So he might be onto something. I mean, these are brilliant people out there. But I think what is interesting as a consumer, look, I'm back in the CISO world. I can tell you, and my boss is great. He's like, hey, go out and do what's right for the company, buy ransomware tooling, buy pen testing tooling, attack surface, all this stuff, right? But inherently, we do realize as CISOs and CIOs that we want to do what's right for the company, right? If you manage your costs smartly, right, you can use that money for other purposes, whether it's upskilling your team or, you have a certain amount of money that's not tied to revenue generation. So what I think is really interesting in this space is, one is obviously you guys have heard AI for SecOps. I mean, there's probably 25 companies I know, right? I've advised a few, I've helped a few. That's a very it's like the obvious, okay, let's go after SecOps because The world is talking about the lack of skilled level 1, level 2, level 3 people. We're going to go and throw money at this problem, right? And may or may not pan out, right? Because people are using different angles. The other one is, which is preemptive or proactive. Because you have to remember, SecOps is very detective and reactive, right? In the mostly, as much as a SecOps person can turn to you and tell you, hey, no, we're getting near real time, right? It's actually very reactive, right? Let's just be honest. But on the offensive side and the preemptive side, right? The idea of being able to use agentic capabilities, I'm not going to name it as one capability alone, to preempt as part of your builder cycle, the build environment, or builder cycle, build life cycle, if you will, I think has a lot of promise because, as Chirati mentioned, there's not just friction, but there's a lack of understanding and context for developers of what AppSec people need or are looking at or looking to do. And on the flip side, the AppSec people don't really fully understand the context of the product that's being built. Because product starts off with, hey, we're going to build this. And as they get customer feedback, that product evolves. There's like, I need these features, I need that, I might need to replatform this. And what that one document that the security guy got way in advance is very different from what they need to be really looking for in terms of risk in the product, right? So I think there's a lot of promise there. And I haven't heard enough companies in that space, honestly, Pratik and Shirdeep. I haven't heard, not too many. There's a little bit of noise, but I can talk a little bit more about that noise in the future.
Sure. And I know, Chirdeep, you obviously spoke about how LLMs are becoming very strong as far as reasoning is concerned. So Sameer was talking about the proactive side of or preemptive side of security. And it looks like we can use the reasoning power of LLMs and all these frontier models to come up with more offensive or proactive security.
Yeah, as I worked with LLMs, I think one insight that I got was that they've seen a lot of code and they've been trained with reinforcement learning on a lot of code, right? And that's in retrospect, it's obvious why, because replacing software developers, which is the number one expense of a company these days, is a probably what hundreds of billions, if not $1 trillion market, right? So if you can unleash agents for $50 a month to replace a software engineer, that's great, right? And so the pace of improvement, especially in software, has been to see. And I myself use these tools every day. So the knock-on effect of that is that we could build cybersecurity tools for applications which are very capable because they understand code and they're very good with the environment around code, which is CI/CD, command line, think Python code to do various tests. And so the future obviously is that as more code is written, more of the testing, more of the defense, and more of the offensive security will become agentic as well.
So maybe let's just move on to more of the practical implementation of product security and budgeting. So maybe the first question around that, Sameer, if you can talk to us a little bit about budgeting. I mean, if you look at the way Gartner characterizes all these things, and they do a pretty good job of classifying the market based on their interactions with a lot of companies. They have application security testing, vulnerability management, technical testing, which includes all the pen testing areas, compliance. These are actually multi-billion dollar budget. Each of them are multi-billion dollar markets by themselves. But one of the things that always comes up is when you look at product security, is it just a subset of application security, which means from a budget perspective, a subset of application security budget will be allocated to it? Or is it a new line item where a new budget is getting created? Or is it taking budgets from different areas and then creating a new budget? Would love to hear how you, wearing your CISO hat, would think about it.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. What I've noticed is, for example, I remember this phenomenon around data security, right? Data security in some companies came up through privacy angle, data privacy because of GDPR. It became a line item on the budget separate from all these infrastructure security or AppSec or any of these things, right? It became almost like a separate line item. It was small initially, then it grew, and then it kind of got absorbed under. I'll give an example. For me, it got absorbed under cloud security because we were a very cloud native company, but I can see it being a standalone entity under a CISO where it would work closely with legal potentially, right? Or the compliance teams with a leader, with an actual data security VP level, senior level person. On the flip side, with something like product security, especially after meeting you guys, I started to say, what is this product security thing? Like, where does it report into? What I started seeing, it was almost like an opportunity for CISOs to elevate their AppSec leaders or their CloudSec leaders into another level and have a few things report into them, right? So, for example, I was talking to a friend of mine and he was like, yeah, my ProdSec leader owns Cloud AppSec, and I'm thinking of putting third-party sec under them. I was like, third-party sec is TPRM, man. That's compliance. Why would you do that? He's like, yeah, you're right. I'm having a hard time deciding, but it includes supply chain. So I need him to have someone who's just focused on supply chain risk because the third-party risk guys don't go deep enough because they're governance, risk, and compliance. So he's asking me for advice, and I said, everything you're doing makes sense because a product, it could be a non-technical product, okay? But at the end of the day, a Tesla, all products are becoming to some extent driven by software, having software components, communicating via software. Let's even look at a BMW or a Jeep, right? Grand Cherokee, which may not have the sophistication of a Tesla, but it still has connectivity through Sirius radio. It's got connectivity through 5G hotspots, right? So when you think about product security, you have to actually include those other components that come under the supply chain with it, right? So I think that's what I'm seeing is that it's becoming the bigger budget. So the CISO can go to the board and say, or his boss, maybe not the board level, but hey, AppSec is a $3 million budget. I need 4 because it includes and backend and some interface, right? So I think that's where I'm seeing it head, man, Prateek.
I think that's great because based on our discussions with a lot of CISOs, we have seen that SEC is a budget that is being created, which is larger than AppSec because AppSec is very much focused on the code, but product is much bigger. One other thing we want to talk about on the implementation side is the DevSec friction or DevSec collaboration. And maybe Chiradeep, you keep talking about, you have been in both the roles. You have managing security in your previous company. You have been on the developer side. So maybe I'll just hear your perspective on the DevSec friction or DevSec collaboration when it comes to implementation of product security.
Yeah, it arises naturally from, developers are in charge of delivering product and security is in charge of delivering security. The goals are not aligned and harmonized. And so when you ask developers, hey, show up for this meeting with security to discuss this, long list of 50 vulnerabilities, they'll sometimes grudgingly come, but they'll say, no, I got this issue to look at or this issue to look at maybe next time. Or even if you give them the list of the actual fix, some tools actually will give you the fix release 3 months later or whatever, right? Because I got other things to worry about, other critical issues to think about, and this is all heavily affecting. So that's a very natural reason for the friction. I hope some of these emerging AI solutions will help fix that. As I said, I couldn't get the 2 teams to be in the same room, although both teams reported to me. So what if they could send their agents to talk about their problems and the agents collaborated to come to maybe 80% of the solution? So I'm hoping for some kind of a breakthrough in that arena, but it's still good science fiction.
Yeah, I think agent to agent communication is going to be critical in that. Yeah. So Sameer, maybe one of the things just to wrap up is if you were to look at organizations who already have some sort of an AppSec practice, what are some of the steps that they should take to evolve into a more product security, a holistic kind of a security of product? Anything that you would recommend them to look at?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the traditional answer, Prateek, is going to be, give me more headcount, right? Give me more headcount so I can get involved early on. Convince, like if I was working for Chiradeep, I'd say, hey, Chiradeep, you're the CTO. Can you convince one of the architects and enterprise architecture to come to the security side? They can learn and empathize with us. They can live with us, learn from us, right? And we've all tried that, right? We've all said, hey, get a developer come work in security. They will really learn a lot. Or send a security guy to work in development and be part of, maybe DevOps or whatever, right? Like, there's only so much you can do because that's not your full-time job. You'll eventually go back to your day job and your muscle memory will kick back in. This is my mandate, right? I think the way that I'm seeing the world going, talking to people like Chiradeep, is that I think agents will help us bridge that gap if we use it right. If we're able to ask the right questions, give the agents right context. So it's a combination of we don't want human error, but we also want the agents to know enough to be valuable. I think the other piece is transparency, right? I think, and maybe it was probably good that Chiradeep ran both security and development teams, but a lot of times it's human nature again that we tend to live in our silos and say, well, security is asking, but we've got a day job. We can't keep responding to their requests for information. And then security tries to mandate it by saying it's compliance and we'll write a policy and standard around it. It becomes very messy. I think transparency is very important culturally. I think these teams have to start respecting each other's work, but also have to start sharing the artifacts early on and allowing the agents that I use and they use to engage with each other. So I think there's an agent to agent play here that I haven't fully figured out. Maybe you guys can come up with a dream. But how do we make this a reality where the human emotion doesn't come into the middle of solving product security holistically?
All right, perfect. And so that's a wrap. This has been a very enlightening conversation, Sameer, Chirdeep. Thank you so much for sharing all your insights. And
Thank you for having us.
thank you all of our listeners for joining us on ProdSec Decoded. If you found value in today's conversation, please subscribe, leave a review, and share with your colleagues. We'll be back soon again with another episode. Until next time, stay secure.